recording? Yep. Hey folks. Time of recording, the end of the world occurred 1 hour and 15 minutes ago. That's right, the Mayan Apocalypse. Or the Mayan New Year, as it strictly speaking is. And I thought I'd make a little video about it because this is what's the 6th, 7th apocalypse I've lived through in the last 20 years, and that's the only ones I can think of. I'm sure there's been more. And let's think, back in the 90s there was that, was it Comet Hale-Bopp? The one that supposedly had the Doomsday asteroid in its trail, or a UFO, and all those people killed themselves out in America because they thought their spirits would go off to a UFO. Let's see, we've had the Millennium Bug, we've had 9/11, which, you know, some people were saying, you know, even though it only killed a few thousand people, it still was seen as the end times by some people. I remember a guy I used to work with when that happened, he was convinced it was the end times in a Christian biblical sense, and used to spend a lot of time basically sneaking off to hide in corners to pray to himself, and, you know, nothing wrong with that, but he was getting really scarily obsessive about that. I mean, he wrote his own specific prayer and was literally hunched up in the corners of the place I worked, praying to himself very rapidly over and over again, like proper mental breakdown level. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. The Millennium Bug. There's a variety of other millennial ones. We've had the Rapture a couple of times, both beginning and end, because apparently there's some sort of signifying start of the Rapture and the end of the Rapture, so no one was sure whether it was the starting event where everyone would just poof away and vanish, or the end of the Rapture where everyone would poof away and vanish. So, you know, it's a bit of a letdown on two things there. And that's actually the one that got me, because that one got me thinking along lines of the guy. So he's an American evangelical preacher, I believe, and when it didn't happen the first time, he basically said, "Oh, it's been put off a couple of months," and he died because he knew he was dying of cancer, I think. And so in a way, the world did end, but in a very personal sense, it ended for him. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's the real reason behind all these doomsday prophecies, because ultimately the world will end one day. I mean, even if you're entirely scientific about it, we've got a few billion years until the sun goes over and consumes all the planets of the solar system. We'll probably be long gone by then, but I mean, every day, every day estimate about 1.8 people die each second. So at the moment of the Mayan Apocalypse, that is to say, I believe the Mayan Apocalypse it was basically the Mayan New Year, which in turn was set to the winter solstice, which makes sense in a sort of universal way to have that as New Year, because the longest time of the year is the time from there on the days only get lighter, and that occurred here in London at 12 minutes past 11 this morning, or 12 minutes past 5 Central American time. Yeah. That was the point where the New Year started, the 13th Bakatun, or what would have been a really big party for the Mayans if they still existed. But we always seem to be on the lookout for, I mean, it's instinctual, we always look out for threats to our existence, that's part of survival. But doomsday prophecies have a much more galvanizing aspect to them. They're very universal. It's this idea that we're all going to die together, because death in itself is a very individual, lonesome thing. It's a personal thing, and everyone always says, I mean, it's a very common thing at least, for people to be very scared that they will die alone, and in a way you're always going to die alone because you're the one who's dying, unless you're taking some people with you. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, is the end of the world a sort of wish fulfillment in a way? Wish fulfillment that we just don't want to die alone? Let's say the world is ending every moment, every day, and since I've started making this video, hundreds of people have died worldwide, from age, disease, and all other manner of causes. I'm not going to break it down. I mean, I have no access to the sort of figures I need to do that accurately anyway, but was it somewhere in excess of 50 million people will die this year. Every minute, over 6,000 people are dying. Well, sorry, every hour, rather. Every hour over 6,000 people are dying. It's just, in your human lifetime, nearly 4 billion people will die. And that's, more than half the entire population of the planet will be dead within your lifetime. There'll be people to replace them, of course, but everyone's dying. Every one of those, a human life, gone. And that's what I think. I think that the idea of the apocalypse, the end of all life in an instant, one moment, is giving people a sort of nihilistic thrill and comfort that they're not going to be dying alone. It's like I could live with it better if everyone else was going with me, which is a horrible thing to say like that, but I think there's an aspect of it there. But frankly, I think people are getting a little bit tired of it. Middle Ages, the whole idea that in the Middle Ages, like a modern newspaper has more information in it than the human being would be exposed to in their entire lifetime a few hundred years ago, has a lot of resonance, because we do get tired of concepts a lot faster now. It's almost though we are set up to have a certain ticker that rolls over and occasionally resets, and we do get overwhelmed by things. That's why people are always trying to reinvent things, make them new, so we still catch our attention, because we pay attention to the things that are out of the ordinary, the new things. So we are getting a bit, at least I am. I'm sure there's a lot of people just joking about it, but it's because it is a very silly concept. Particularly from like a cross-religious view. There's been a lot of people from many different faiths I've seen saying, "Oh no, Mayan Apocalypse." I'm like, you're not Mayan. You didn't believe. You don't pray to the great snake god Quetzalcoatl, or you're not worried about the Namchu of Enki coming down from the skies to reprogram our minds to their base settings, or any of these other basically dead cultural ideas that are recycled to prop up a completely different cultural myth. And it's not quite cross-cultural contamination, but it's very strange that faiths which are generally inherently self-regulating, they work from their own internal sets of rules, would look to another faith, which is basically what the idea of the Mayan Apocalypse was, even if it's been entirely misconstrued. They would look to another faith for signs of the end times rather than signs within their own faith, which is again a bit confusing. Personally, I would like more evidence. Anyone who says, predictions this, predictions that, well, the predictions, I have yet to see anyone make predictions that have actually come true. In any concrete, specific sense. Most predictions are based on generalities that can be interpreted in many ways, and that's how it's not option paralysis. What do you call it? I don't know, selection bias. The general concept: we have an idea put in our heads, so we see patterns that we want to see. By saying something very generalised, it's like horoscopes. It is basically horoscopes. It is that because we are pattern-finding creatures, we find patterns in many, many things. But there's no more actual prediction of the future beyond death and taxes. There are certain inevitable things in life saying that are going to happen. it really isn't that surprising. It's like, you will die one day. Ooh. The one that always got me was the Trick or Magician called. It's like, pick a card, any card, just talking to someone over the TV on a magic show, and like, is this your card? 99% of people? Is that? No, it's not. There's 1% of people out there who did pick that card, and they're all, oh, it's magic! No, it's not. It's just that you happen to be one of the people that that particular situation suited. I'm getting a bit off topic now. Generally, life will go on. And I came to a small world. There used to be some more involved in people who were interested in survivalism and all this, and have their big doomsday plans, and their bug-out bags, and their, oh yeah, I can wander into the forest and live there for months. Rah, 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 rah. I've got 6,000 rounds of ammunition, you know, stockpile, and like. For one thing, if you presume the old adage, you know, not with a bang but with a whimper, the very fact that you can acknowledge things are decaying in a situation automatically means it's not going to be going out with a bang. It's automatically a whimper. It is an elongated degradation of a situation. And if you can recognise that a situation is degrading, it is automatically the latter. It's not an instantaneous thing, which is what people want. People want it to be a big, I'm free, the locks are off, the shackles are gone from society, I can do whatever the hell I like, I am the road warrior. But the problem with that is that it's never going to happen. That's that. If you're in an actual disaster situation, you're not going to be enjoying it. That is, it's wish fulfillment is most of it. It's the comfort blanket that I have prepared in a particular way, therefore I will be safe. People are buying lots of equipment they don't really know how to use and stockpiling it, but it's a safety blanket. It is meaningless because they're really sitting there with tools they have no idea how to use effectively. Best case scenario, you come across someone who is not willing to kill you for your equipment and will trade it for you for something that you can use to survive. It's an issue I brought up on some forums. I think it was the last post I ever made to the forums, those particular forums, was another adage. I do dislike adages, but they're the easiest way to communicate a general concept. The idea that if you put a frog into boiling water, it will die, but if you raise the water, it will jump out of boiling water rather, but if you raise the water slowly, it will eventually cook to death because it won't see the gradual change coming. And I am yet to meet a survivalist who is set up in any other way than to react to a major, complete collapse of society in an instant. They're only set up to adapt to the bang scenario. The whimper scenarios, no, because the whole point of whimper, it takes so long. You adapt to it on a personal level all the time. And no one could really give me an answer that, okay, instead of this breakdown of society having happened instantly, like within a day, what if that breakdown of society happens over 20 years? Yeah, once a year things are getting just a little bit worse, every tick-tock, and you know, at first you have to get used to one little bit, and you just get used to it, and you're not going to start sitting there in your crazy bunker eating canned beans for every day because, you know, one small liberty has been infringed on or one small bad thing has happened. You're going to get used to it, you're going to adapt, it will become normal. And one little thing adds to another little thing, and I was just interested to see if any of them had that threshold. Is there a point where you would be sitting there like, okay, that's all those things on the list, now is the time I revert to my plan. And there wasn't. And that's what life is. It's adapting to continual changes. The major upheaval events are, thankfully, very rare. And if you do see them coming, there's generally not a lot you can do to really help yourself. I do believe there are negative changes in the world coming. I think we're, particularly in the world financial crisis, has been, while it isn't all of it, there's something of a perfect storm coming. Major world shortages all tying up within the same sort of few decades, and we are talking decade-long time spans for these things. And the best way to deal with these things is to basically live a more sustainable lifestyle. If you can support yourself, you shouldn't be putting it off for a major cataclysmic event. You should be working on it, because it's the sort of thing you need practice at. You're not going to be able to say, right, I'm abandoning cities, I'm going to go out and find an abandoned farm, and good luck with that alone. And, till the land. Never done it before in your life. You're not even know how to saddle a horse. You know, you don't know about crop rotation, you don't know how to make your own pesticides, you don't know what plants will grow well there, how to deal with the soil being decayed, and that's a big one. We've passed the point of peak oil now. Petrol is only getting more expensive, but petrol is used for a lot of things, one of which is both fertilisers and pesticides. And that, I'm not sure that's been taken into account in the general figures about peak food. Peak food assumes, I believe, a static growth compared to a global population. Peak food being the point where there isn't basically not enough food to feed everyone. If that doesn't tie in with peak oil, the fact that pesticides and artificial fertilisers will get more expensive, and peak water as well, the ability for clean water production, and there's a lot of them tying in together around about 2030, 2040. So yeah, it might be in a good way. I mean, not a collapse. We're never going to see a complete collapse again. That's the bang versus whimper scenario. But we're never going to see complete collapse of global trade. I mean, hell, if they have to, they'll go back to sailing ships and trading spices. But we're never going to see a complete collapse. But what we might see is a more localised production, and I kind of hope for that, because we conceptually we can get our socialisation, we can find our peer groups online. That's not a localised phenomenon, so that we form meta-groups, we form multiple social groups based on sort of singular aspects of our interests. And because we get so many of them, it forms a social group, but it's one that changes all the time. I mean, to bring up a point in the news at the moment, of course, the Sandy Bridge school shootings, where people are... The nub of the matter is that nobody noticed this kid had major mental problems. And while I'm not going to say that it's a cure-all for everything, because if anyone thinks of the idea being that if people were more involved in their communities, knew their neighbours and so forth, they would be more inclined to notice mental problems within people in their community. Let's make sure the time's okay. Yep. And I'm inclined to agree that a more localised, more friendly community is a good thing. It is better than having a disassociated local community, people who just happen to live near each other and never speak, never see each other, never know each other. But I'm not so blind as to think that localized village structure would solve that entirely. I mean, we can't isolate communities like that. I mean, there's always going to be long-range communication. Without long-range communication, you don't have access to information as freely as we're now used to. You may not be able to, say, self-diagnose issues. Well, of course, self-diagnosis is obviously a whole problematic kettle of fish. It does give you insight into working into the wider world, and to see that rather, oh, they're just crazy, then you might think, oh, they've got a problem. That's the point. There's one of the old Sherlock Holmes stories. I believe Baskervilles, maybe? The different points of view between Watson and Holmes. Watson looking out and seeing the quaint little villages in the middle of nowhere, and Holmes looking out and seeing these small isolated towns where many sinister crime has occurred and never been noticed by the world at large. People have gotten away with terrible things because they are so cut off from the world. In a larger sense, yes, that's why I could never imagine going back to a world without long-range communications, without communications at a distance like the internet. Because without that, people are isolated, and any community will eventually follow certain patterns of human behaviour and form isolated mentalities, which are generally harmful. I think simply getting to know your neighbours, because if things do take a turn for the worst, and I hope they don't, but getting to know your neighbours and, say, being able to grow your own potatoes and so forth is probably going to do a lot more good for you than having 6,000 rounds of ammunition stored in your basement in wax cylinders or what have you, because you can't move with that and you can't eat it. There are a lot of lone wolves out there, people who just love the fantasy of, I will be the lone survivor, I will be the road warrior, I will be the hero of my personal story, and you're always the centre of your own universe, but yeah, not all those stories get happy endings. Basically, if you're concerned for the future, build a future. Don't be prepared to just to fight it out, claw away and take what other people have, because that's what survivalists do. They've got material stored for a set length of time, but they have no way of producing more. I know a few people saying about how you can go out and kill your own food, but you do need vegetables, You do need other vitamins and minerals. I mean, hell, you eat nothing but rabbits, you will die of malnutrition. However, there are enough vitamins and minerals in mashed potatoes that you can just live straight off it. But no person is an island. We exist as products of a society. If you wish for a better world tomorrow, you must build it today. Which are all disgustingly trite little sayings, but essentially true. I don't know about you, but I've got work to do.